So we've all heard of an SEO, right? Otherwise known as a search engine optimization, like Google, Yahoo, DuckDuckGo. These online search engines, they're all about using the right keywords to net you the results you want from the algorithm. Well, DNA is basically nature's algorithm in a lot of ways, so may I present to you the first and ever GEO, Gene Engine Optimization. You see, nothing in this deck is natural. We're filling the gaps in the genome with the keywords of other creatures. When building this deck, I didn't ask for vanilla creatures, I asked for more abilities, which is a goofy paraphrasing of the character Dr. Henry Wu from Jurassic World. But anyway, yeah, so Indominus is going to be inheriting the keyword abilities of all the creatures that we pitch as it enters, making our opponents have to contend with a true monstrosity that should have never been. Hello and welcome to the CommanDorks. I'm Tarren.
I'm Beef. It's a new year, and that means it's time for us to trample through some new deck techs. This time, 2 Sultai decks.
Yes, in the next gameplay stream, we are planning to have all 4 decks running Sultai colors, which will probably mean a lot of graveyard shenanigans and a lot of green ramp and, well, some blue stuff thrown in there. But in this video, I'm going to be going over my Indominus Rex Alpha deck, which is a Voltron strategy that has a ton of resiliency to keep racking up that commander damage. But after this video, please check out our other video with Beef's 2 Wild and Oozy Dudes deck, featuring Mimeoplasm and the companion Umari the Collector.
Before Tarren gets started, please check out the OGS Discord server. It has a great community of fun people to play Commander with on a regular basis. Link for that will be in the description below. Please take a second to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe if you haven't yet. Now let's sit back and learn about what abomination Tarren has created.
Oh boy, here we go. Count on it, because there's counters involved. So, let's talk about the commander itself, Indominus Rex Alpha, which is 5 CMC, so it's 1 generic, and then 2 hybrid Dimir mana, so it's blue or black for either of those, and then 2 green. It's a legendary dinosaur mutant, so we're both got mutants going on in our Sultai. It's a 6/6, and it says, as Indominus Rex Alpha enters the battlefield, discard any number of creature cards. It enters with a flying counter on it if a card discarded this way has flying. The same is true for First Strike, Double Strike, Death Touch, Hexproof, Haste, Indestructible, Lifelink, Menace, Reach, Trample, and Vigilance. Also, there's more. He has an ETB that says, when Indominus Rex enters the battlefield, draw a card for each counter on it. So that's any kind of counter. It doesn't have to be the ability counters. If we find ways to give him 1/1 counters at instant speed, it's before that resolves, it's going to count that too. So, yeah, it is a beast. So, how does the piloting work for this? I mean, it's a Voltron deck, so it's kind of straightforward. We're trying to ramp our way to that 5 mana threshold so we can try to cast and resolve Indominus Rex, ideally discarding some creatures that pack several keyword abilities on them in order to, 1, refuel our hand, and also grant Indominus as many abilities as we possibly can. The most important abilities here probably being Hexproof and Indestructible, and then ideally some form of evasion, flying, menace, trample, what have you.
Maybe all of them.
Or all of them, and have fun trying to block him then. So, but yeah, our strategy becomes constantly put pressure on our opponents until we can threaten lethal with commander damage. So, oh yeah, one notable rule just to be aware of. So if an opponent, let's say we cast Indominus and he's entered. If an opponent does manage to remove him in response to that ETB trigger, we're still going to draw our cards because the ability looks at the removed permanent as it previously existed as that ability resolves. So it previously existed with those counters on it, so it'll still draw us those cards. So something I looked up because I was curious about what would happen if they did that. So some key pieces here that are going to help us really push our way forward to kind of, accelerate that commander damage we're gunning for here. So really good one is Luxior, Giada's Gift. So this card is it's a 1-drop equipment artifact. It says equipped creature is going to get +1/+1 for each counter on it. And it has another ability that involves planeswalkers. We don't care about that. I don't think we're running any planeswalkers. We used to in this deck, but I took those out actually. So you can see where this can be quite the buff for the likes of Indominus. We can easily be pushing him from being a 6/6 to a 12/12 in a lot of cases. Next on the docket, Tainted Strike. So if we have managed to buff Indominus to...
It ain't so.
Yeah, if we... Taint. God damn it.
Oh boy.
But if we manage to get Indominus to at least 9 power, this card's going to be a kill shot combat trick, because it's going to give it +1/+0 and then Infect. So a little sneaky way to try and just instantly knock somebody out of the game. Next,
it seems appropriate for a dinosaur like this, that it all of a sudden just snap and eat someone at the table. I love that phonetically.
Yep. So it's like, and with all the evasive pieces too, sometimes they just can't block it, and it's like, okay, you're the biggest threat, so I'm taking you out. But yeah,
something's got to eat the blood-sucking lawyer,
Oh boy. So here come the Jurassic Park references again.
Right.
I already had one video doing that. All right, Gavel of the Righteous. So we've got a 2-drop equipment that's going to get a charge counter at the beginning of each combat, or on our turn. The equipped creature is going to get +1/+1 for each charge counter on the equipment. Furthermore, if there are at least four charge counters, the equipped creature is going to have double strike, which in a Voltron deck is very much sought after. And I looked it up. Sultai has no creatures with the inherent ability double strike printed on it, unfortunately. So we're not going to be getting a double strike counter with Indominus, which is sad day. There's nothing, no creatures currently.
That's wild. That's
so
interesting.
Yeah, there's nothing. The only way currently is through equipments and maybe spells. I don't know if even there's like instant spells that can do it, but yeah, equipment. So that's why this is here, to try and do that. Okay, this one's a little dirty. Vorinclex Monstrous Raider. So this on its own doesn't necessarily help us win outright, but if we have it in play, not only is it suppressing our opponent's counters strategies, like Mimeoplasm, but it lets Indominus enter with double the counters. So even if I only discard, let's say, one creature that happens to have Flying, Death Touch, Lifelink, that's going to be 2 Flying counters, 2 Death Touch counters, 2 Lifelink counters. That's 6 cards drawn. So the idea of why I'm considering this a key piece is it's got a very good chance of letting us just draw into the answers we need. So, but yeah, fun.
Awesome.
Next up, I have Zoprindel Hunger Dominus. So it's kind of like that enchantment that doubles power and toughness, but it's just not a creature this time. Doubles the power and toughness of all of my creatures at the beginning of each combat, so my opponent's combats as well. It does have the keyword reach on it, so we can still discard it if we want to in the earlier game. And it can give itself indestructible if we pay the mana and sacrifice, I think it's 2 other creatures. Yeah, yep. So yeah, really good, just a good way to pump up our commander's power. And then finally, this is very much a recursion piece, but I think just because of the insane nature of it, Rise of the Dark Realms. Just a banger card that, if I'm reliably filling my graveyard with good options, the hope is by the time we're casting this, we've got enough creatures under our control to take the game on the following turn. So,
yeah.
Oh yeah, and oh my god, with your creature-only deck, I just... Oh boy, I'm gonna be hoping I draw this one. It is 9 mana though, so
Yeah, it's a tough one to cast.
yeah,
But,
and I mean
yeah.
someone else could counter it, so that's
If
it's
you get that off, though, if anybody ever gets that spell off, I never feel bad. That you earned it. You
yeah.
committed
If
to cast.
if it's able to happen, and I don't get board wiped, yeah. All right, so next I have a separate category that I've called my gene pool, or I think the community calls this keyword soup. But anyway, I'm calling it my gene pool for this deck. So these are cards that I'm more than likely not gonna care about casting. I'm gonna be holding onto them in my hand so I can discard them for Indominus's entering. So we have Banehound, which is haste lifelink, a Gurmag Swiftwing, flying first strike haste, Wilson Refined Grizzly, Vigilance Reach Trample, Nighthawk Scavenger. In the late game is a pretty great blocker or threat in the air. If we have different card types in graveyards, like it's really good. But it does have the 3 keyword abilities on it too. Weathered Sentinels, great blocker, can punish opponents for attacking me, but that's got it's got 4 keyword abilities, but thankfully Indominus does not inherent Defender, otherwise it'd be a little silly. We have Miri the Cursed, another flying first strike haster, Vengeful Reaper, flying Death Touch haste, and finally Scavenged Brawler, which has 4 keyword abilities on it. And great synergy because I'm discarding it to Indominus that's getting the 4 abilities, and now it's in my graveyard, and it has an ability that I can activate from the graveyard to give Indominus, more of the, I guess, double redundancy for those counters, but then also 4 +1/+1 counters. So really
Awesome.
good. Yep.
That's a cool piece.
That's my gene pool. Moving into ramp pieces. So I've got a rampy land, Castle Garenbrig. Which comes really useful for recasting Indominus after it's died at least twice, because at that point we're able to use more of that green mana that's limited to use on creatures only. Arboreal Grazer is just a 1-drop reacher, a great early game blocker, but can get us an extra land into play and pairs perfectly with the next ramp card here, Flare of Cultivation, which we can cast for free by sacrificing a non-token green creature if we want. But yeah, otherwise it's just a cultivate effect for basic lands. So, Birds of Paradise, a flyer, and it's a mana dork that's tapping for any color for that fixing. I do have Dark Ritual because just getting that early game Indominus out there, and it's the 2 hybrid, so I can use 2 of the black for that, and then the last black for the colorless. So it's a great way to have a surprise. The dinosaur's broken out sooner than you thought.
Perfect.
And Delighted Halfling, because man, it is a bummer if we get countered. So we have a couple ways to prevent that if we can.
Yeah, you really kind of get hosed on a counter.
Yeah,
you've pitched the extra cards and you.
I'm not actually. It's as it's entering, I'm pitching.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah. So if it does get countered, I'm not discarding the cards yet. So
that
I guess
would be extra painful.
Yeah, but if I jump the gun too soon, though, I could be accidentally revealing what I have in my hand if I don't say, is it resolving first? So
right.
Yeah, if I get too excited, which has been known to happen. Soul Ring, which, I mean, it's not the best for Indominus in his own right, because he's only 1 colorless at the start, but we always welcome more ramp for other things. So, Biophagus, which is a mana dork that can make a mana of any color, and if it's spent on a creature, that creature is going to enter with an additional +1/+1 counter. So this is a really sought after mana dork that I like to see, because I mean it makes it that making Indominus a 7/7 instead of a 6/6, that's 1 turn less to kill a player if we keep focusing on the same player. So that's really really good to see. Cabal Ritual, another good ritual piece, because we're putting tons of stuff in our graveyard. It's such a natural fit to have in here. So if very least, even if we don't have enough things in the graveyard, it's we're ramping 1 ahead for the moment. So Sylvan Caryatid, it's a mana dork with hexproof. So good early gameplay if we need to get mana fixing, but then it's great to discard as well. Kodama of the Quest Tree. This is a backup way of ensuring Indominus has trample. Really important for getting through for that commander damage, but it also in a lot of cases is going to fetch us a basic land as long as a modified creature we control connects with an opponent, and Indominus is almost certainly going to be a modified creature, so the Kodama Indominus combo is really nice. A Leyline Prowler we have because it's a Death Touch Lifelinker, a mana dork, really underrated mana dork, really, I think. And Nylea Keen-Eyed. So when she's in any zone other than the battlefield, she's counting as a creature. So if we discard her to Indominus, we're getting that Indestructible counter. Otherwise, if we do hardcast her, she's going to let us cast our creatures for one less, and we can dump leftover mana into getting some pseudo card draw out of it too. And nice little segue here into the card draw pieces. So I mean, obviously our commander is just a really good card draw piece, albeit we are losing cards, but the idea there is that we're coming out ahead, right? So we're hoping to discard 3 creatures and then get like 7 cards back out of it. So it's an investment. Baleful Strix, just a really good early game flying blocker that also draws a card on ETB, and its 2 abilities for Indominus. A Hydroid Krasis. Man, I remember when this card was an absolute menace in Standard years back when players would run Nissa Who Shakes the World for that double green mana. Oh boy. But this is a great thing to discard to Indominus, but also good alternative card draw option that gives us a big body out there. Glissa Sunslayer. Another pretty good card draw piece, but doubles as potential removal for enchantments. So I do run Intuition because I had a proxy of it lying around, like a one I got off Etsy or something. So this is one that I'm iffy on. I might take it out because it's pretty powerful. It's like a $160 card for real. So I don't know. I'm on the fence. I could easily replace it with something else that's not quite as crazy. But search your library for any 3 cards, reveal them to target opponent. They choose one, put that one into your hand, and the rest in your graveyard. So yeah, I mean, I'm probably gonna get 3 of my best creatures and make them choose. So I don't know. Like I said, by the time we get to the gameplay stream, I might have slotted this one out. We'll see. I feel kind of bad sometimes when things like this get slotted in. Kefnet the Mindful. This is a flying indestructible, which is a great thing to discard to Indominus. Ooh, I get the evasion, I get the indestructible, just awesome. But also having Kefnet in play is a pretty good draw engine while letting us bounce lands back like Basiju or Takenuma or Odawara, which we run all of those. So pretty good. And oh yeah, he can't attack or block unless we have 7 or more cards in hand. Well, most times we're gonna be there with Indominus. Threats Undetected. Normally, kind of considered somewhat of a mediocre card, but man, in this deck, it's so good because we're searching for 4 creature cards with different powers. An opponent chooses 2 to go to my hand, and then the other 2 will shuffle back in. So let's say I choose Sire of 7 Deaths, Breaker of Creation, Sagu Mauler, and Kefnet. What do you do as an opponent? Do you give me my protection pieces, or do you risk letting me have a ton of draw later on? So that's a tough one. But
that's a tough one.
We also have Toski, Bearer of Secrets, another indestructible creature. But if we do have it in play, it's gonna draw us a card every time we connect. Elder Gargaroth, it's 3 keyword abilities, but a great blocker, and another way to help, the Vigilance is great because it helps us keep pressure on opponents with the attacking. So, okay, this is one I'm going to talk a little bit more extensively. Breaker of Creation. So, looking at this card, you're probably thinking, wait, Tarren, why in the hell are you including this as card draw? It only has 1 ability for Indominus. Wrong. Hexproof from each color technically counts as 5 separate counters when discarded via Indominus. See Rule 702.1c in the Magic Comprehensive Rules. An effect may state that the same is true for a list of keyword abilities or similar. If one of those keyword abilities has variants or variables, and the effect grants that keyword or counters of that keyword to one or more objects and or players, it grants each appropriate variant and variable of that keyword. So if we discard this to Indominus, we are netting 5 cards and giving it 5 separate hexproof counters, 1 for each color. And if we manage to reanimate this thing, well, we got ourselves an 8/4 with Annihilator 2. So, yeah, it's kind of a little sneaky one. Anyway, we also have Great Henge because, boy oh boy, it doubles as a ramp piece, but we can resolve the ETB trigger from Great Henge first, putting that +1/+1 counter on Indominus, which, when his ETB resolves, is another card draw. So, moving into removal here. So I do run Bojuka Bog because, having a little bit of graveyard hate for our opponent's decks is good. But I think that's kind of the only real graveyard hate that we have in the deck. So we don't have a sneaky way to really tutor it either. I don't think we don't have crop rotation, or I'm not running it anyway. So, but just in case, Besiju Who Endures, just nice to have a removal option on a land. Odawara Soaring City is a bounce removal on a land, but it's also very useful in our case to bounce our commander. I'll touch on that a little bit more later, why that's good. Assassin's Trophy is a flexible spot removal that's going to let our opponent ramp a basic into play. Back to Nature. This is a foil of it that I have that I'm running in this deck, but we are only running 2 enchantments in this deck, and they are both indestructible enchantment creatures. So we're leaning into the enchantment removal quite a bit in this one. So Terra Sunder, another flexible spot removal. Deadly Rollick, the Indominus can be pretty difficult to remove, so having at least one of these free with commander cards I think was necessary. I'm not running any counter spells. I don't have Fierce Guardianship, so not that at least. But what I have is a foil borderless copy that I pulled from a collector Commander Masters booster. So, ooh.
Well, let me tell you, if you want to make any edits, feel free to add as much non-creature spell counters as you want. I encourage that. Yeah.
Well, this one I think at one point I had like maybe 1 or 2 counter spells, but I was like, do I really need that when Indominus is gonna get hexproof anyway in most cases? So that was kind of my logic there. But
dinosaurs eat their problems.
Yeah, there you go. So let's see, I have Eradicator Valkyrie. So after I had this in the deck, and then I took it out, but then when I learned about the counters variant aspect, so it'll get that hexproof from Planeswalkers, I put it back in because that's a card drawn. So, but it's that boast ability is awesome, forcing my opponents to sacrifice a creature or planeswalker. So, final removal piece is Gem Razor, because we have a lot of non-human cards. So Mutate is very much on the table, and it's a backup means of giving Indominus trample, and spot removing an artifact or enchantment is always great. All right. Recursion, we are running a lot because we're putting a lot of stuff in the graveyard. So we have Takenuma Abandoned Mire, which just a backup recursion option on a land. Your classic Reanimate, the 1 mana, target something in graveyard and comes back, but you're losing life equal to its converted mana cost. So great options for this are like Sire of 7 Deaths or Vorinclex or things like that. The Uzalith allows us to keep use of all the counters that Indominus had if he gets removed. At the very least, we should be able to move those counters onto something else that's big and keep ourselves relevant after a board wipe. We also run Agatha's Soul Cauldron. I guess this is my necrotic ooze in a way, a
Yeah.
little bit. I don't have as many creatures with abilities though as you do, but this does allow us to recur some activated abilities on our creatures, but it's really there for the giving Indominus +1/+1 counters. Because if we cast Indominus and we have this out there, we can we've already pitched the creatures in the graveyard by the time his ETB's on stack. We can hold priority, exile a creature from graveyard, and give him a +1/+1 counter before that resolves. So it's there largely for that. Agadim's Awakening is just a really good reanimate, to try and get some of our better creatures back. That doubles as a land. Similar to Balaged Recovery. Just tapped land, but otherwise 3 mana to get something back from our graveyard to hand. And then a recent one I put in here that I was like, why was I not running this before? 6 with the retrace ability is so good, because we're putting a pretty large selection of creatures in our bin, and this is the one that synergizes with Kefnet, because Kefnet can bounce a land back to our hand to activate, or to put the retrace online. So it's pretty good. I like it in here, and it's got reach. So hey, it still draws a card if we discard it. Creeping Renaissance. Man, I used to run this one in my werewolf deck, but then I threw it in here instead because, oh boy, this says we're just putting all the creatures, or I guess you name a permanent type, and then you put all the permanents of that type from your graveyard into your hand. So, I mean, obviously we're choosing creatures.
And the flashbacks.
And the flashbacks. It's reuse. So, we're just gonna get back all the good things that we've already pitched. So if we had to throw away something that had hexproof or something with indestructible, let's get those back in our hand if we need to cast Indominus again. So we do have Command the Dreadhorde. Just lets us reanimate any number of creatures or planeswalkers. Our life total is our limit there, because we're paying life to the total mana value of those things that we bring back. So
really big reanimate.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And then finally, I mentioned already, Rise of the Dark Realms, just a big old the reanimate of reanimation, I guess. All right, protection pieces. So yeah, in any Voltron strategy, protection is a pretty big component when you're investing so many resources into a single creature. So notable, this deck, despite having blue, no counterspells. And it's actually pretty resilient to the likes of Cyclonic Rift, because all those creatures that you're bouncing back to my hand, great. It's great. I'm just gonna get Indominus. Yeah, so go ahead, bounce my creatures. Anyway. So protection pieces, we have Cavern of Souls, because like I mentioned before, getting countered, or Indominus getting countered feels bad. So we have that and the Delighted Halfling to help there. We have Homeward Path, because we also don't want Indominus getting stolen, because there's nothing we can do if our own Indominus with Hexproof and Indestructible gets stolen somehow. And it can happen with auras entering the battlefield without being cast, for one example. So
I feel like that happened in the Indominus Rex Jurassic Park movie. Now that weren't there people trying to steal those dinosaurs? Boy, it's good that you've taken that to heart and prepared for that sort of inevitability.
Yep, freaking InGen, man. We also have March of Swirling Mist, because sometimes the best way to avoid a board wipe is to phase our creature out. And the creature we're caring the most about is Indominus. So. And we do have the option to phase out more if we can pay for 2 by exiling blue card from hand if we need to. But another card I've thrown in here that's a little sneaky thing is Quickling, which is a 2/2 flyer with flash that says when it enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless you return another creature you control to its owner's hand. So this is a really cool roundabout way to protect Indominus retroactively by bouncing him back to our hand, and we set ourselves up for a recast on the following turn. So sometimes we get a better gene pool in our hand that we'd rather splice onto Indominus. So just a good way to reset. And in that similar vein, we have just a simple unsummon in the deck, just a 1-mana bounce creature. Can use it on our opponents if they have a good blocker, or if we want to bounce Indominus and reset. That's there for that too. So. And another protection piece that's very, very, very good in this deck, Ripples of Potential. So another trick we can do is if we target Indominus with this in response to its own ETB, letting us proliferate, and yeah, it'll phase out before the ETB resolves, but remember, it's looking at how the creature existed as it previously existed on the battlefield. So we'll, I mean, we're going to draw a lot of cards. So, and it's phased out
really well when you played it the other night. The just double all of your counters. You get to proliferate each individual counter because you get to double any number of types of counters.
Yeah, and I have considered running more proliferate in the deck, but it's tough to fit it in when I need to really hone in on the keywords. So, but anyway, we'll see. It's an ever evolving deck, so we'll just like mutants, they're always changing.
Yeah.
Bantu the Glorified is an Indestructible Menace. Ronus the Indomitable, Indestructible Death Touch. We're running a lot of gods in the deck because of the Indestructible. Venom Thrope from the 40k decks, Flying Hexproof Death Touch. Just like, wow, what a great combo of abilities to just throw on for throwing away one creature. Carnage Tyrant has Hexproof with Trample is great too. Darksteel Sentinel, Indestructible and Vigilance, and then Sagu Mauler, which is a Hexproof Trample as well. So just a lot of ways to get Hexproof and Indestructible. Moving to utility cards. Sanctum of Eternity. So, like the Unsummon and Quickling cards, this is a self-bounce on a land that we can use. Has to be on our turn, so it's not really a protection piece for that reason, but it can let us, for the, really 3 mana, because we're tapping the land itself, but for 3 mana overall, we're putting Indominus back to our hand for a reset if need be. Master Biomancer is in this deck, because, if Indominus enters, we can resolve the Master Biomancer. Oh, it's entering with. So yeah, it's going to have the 2+1/+1 counters when that Indominus's ETB resolves, which is 2 more cards drawn. Nylia, God of the Hunt. So we have both Nylias in here. This is another backup means of giving Indominus Trample. I mean, the pump ability is relevant as well because, we sometimes got to try and go through for the commander damage, and having those backup options to pump up Indominus is always nice to see. I am running Questing Beast in the deck because it's just a wall of text on a creature. It's the 3 keyword abilities, but then it's got like everything else you could ever want, apparently. It does have the damage can't be prevented clause, which that's like our only way to get around fog effects. I realized as I was typing this out. So yeah, it's good. Dire Fleet Ravager has Menace and Death Touch, but good to play just because it's going to slice everyone's life total by 1/3, getting us closer to kill shot range. And finally, in this utility bucket is Indominus Rex, just a big, scary, hasty threat. The Toxic 4 is semi-relevant. With Vorinclex around too is even better. And Tainted Strike, is in the deck. So we don't lean a ton into the Infector out, but we have a few ways. It puts a clock on opponents too. So, all right, mana base. I mean, aside from basics, we've got Zagoth Triumph, Command Tower. I run Opal Palace because Indominus coming in with that extra +1/+1 counter is great, and it's another 1/1 counter for each time we've cast it from the command zone. So, hey, if people want to keep killing it, if I'm unlucky enough to not get Hexproof on it, or Indestructible, like, hey, I'm just going to try and keep recasting it, and if I have Opal Palace helping me out, it's going to get bigger. So... but otherwise, I'm running some dual lands, shock lands, battle bond lands, couple fetch lands too. Total of 9 basics in the deck. So All right, synergies and combos, you know, aside from a couple of those sneaky-ish plays I mentioned earlier, like the Breaker of Creation or Ripples of Potential, I'm not running any combos, unlike my other Sultai deck that I showcased last time, which was all combos. So you know what? Sometimes you just got to go for the simple combat strategy. So, and that's
Sometimes
okay.
a big scary dinosaur is enough. You know,
Right? You
that's
know,
enough.
sometimes you just got to be satisfied with what you get. And
Gotta channel that inner Timmy and put a big monster on the board.
yep, yep. All right. Weaknesses and challenges. So, I mean, like Beef said in his video, Graveyard Hate here is a pretty big setback because it's going to shut off any of our reanimation targets. I do pack plenty of enchantment removal, but propaganda type effects can still be a pain to deal with. Fog effects can be a big challenge too. We have one that we have Questing Beast, one card that can deal with that. But so if we don't have Questing Beast, you know, we're not really able to do anything. And if I don't have a way to protect Indominus or bounce him back to hand, Edict effects can be pretty effective. A way to get around the Hexproof and Indestructible combo. So, but yeah, that's Indominus. That's this Sultai Voltron deck. So,
I'm
fun
excited for
times.
this matchup. I think there's
Yeah.
gonna be fun. I think that doing a full Sultai pod is gonna be ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh
But
boy.
but I think it's just gonna be a little bit more of what we're doing. It's just gonna be charged up. It's
But yeah, we'll have to ask around and who's got
yeah,
Sultai decks that would be a fun matchup with these. So
I'm excited. Should be fun.